So Silent Hill 2, for the people that bought the expensive edition, is out right now. It still doesn't have any Steam Deck compatibility thing, which is fine, I guess. So it's coming out for everyone in around 12 hours, but we have it right now. We have the advanced access. So the first thing that I would do on the launch options of the game is to put DX11, enable that. Because the game might launch on DX12. I'm going to explain why in a moment, why I decided this, but make sure to type this so the game launches in DX11. And once you're into the game, here in the options menu, it's classic UE5. You got TSR, FSR1, and you might say, where's FSR3, where's XeSS? Well, those are locked behind DX12, which makes a lot of sense. But in this case, well, also the options, everything on low, basically. I only enabled SSAO to have some extra small shadowing. We have TXAA, which seems to be TAA, doesn't seem to be anything very different from what we're used to. So make sure to have this in order to have soft edges, otherwise it looks very pixelated. And on TSR, if you change the TSR preset here, it doesn't affect the resolution scalability. So this is at 100%, but the game is not actually rendering at 100% when I choose the low TSR preset. Not sure what resolution scale this is, maybe 50%, I'm guessing. Also no motion blur. Okay, it's down. So the difference is you don't have a ray tracing option, a separate one. That's the first difference. The second difference is that you don't have the FSR3 option, neither the XeSS option. And in this case, really, I chose the X11 because of the fact that it uses less VRAM, and the stutters, at least for me on the Steam Deck, were less noticeable. So when it uses a lot of VRAM after you play for a few minutes, maybe a few hours better said, that's when it starts filling up the VRAM. And in this case, since we have 16 gigs of shared memory, that shared memory, well, is shared between the VRAM and the system RAM. So on the X11 it seems to be more stable when it comes to how much VRAM it uses. When it goes over the RAM usage, over the 16 gigs, it starts slowing down. I noticed also this on PC on 4GB cards. But the funny thing is, since this game has Nanite and Lumen, it still has reflections going on. So these are ray trace reflections actually, very simple geometry being reflected, but there's still a reflection going on, despite screen space stuff being turned off, the screen space reflections. But as you can probably notice by looking at this video, it's pretty pixelated, and it has traversal stutters. So the main issue with the game on PC is the traversal stutters. So in this case, what I would do is lock it to 30 FPS and keep it on the low setting. Lock it to 30 because traversal stutter will be less noticeable. Also cutscenes are locked at 30, but that's another story. So on the Steam Deck, talking about a UE5 game, I think this looks okay. There's shimmering and chunkiness on the pixels around the hair. There's also FSR1 on the X11. Again, I highly recommend you use the X11 just for stability purposes. But yeah, there's not much else that you can do. FSR1 is basically linear upscaling with sharpness. So that's the other option, which runs similar to this. As you move around, you have stutters in the map like this. And this happened on everything that I played the game on. So this is on the streets. But there's more things to see, so let's jump into somewhere else. Alright, that somewhere else is the forest where the game starts. And as you can see, we're below 30 across the board. I said this before, but I don't know, I haven't played the original. I don't know how often you'll be in a forest in a game like this. It's classic Unreal Engine performance in foliage heavy areas. So yeah, here is when it drops the most for me. But once I get into the city, I get above 30 across the board with these settings, which again is basically low with low TSR, which seems to be 50% resolution. It's pretty chunky, but again with the X11, I think is stable enough. On the X12 you can have those drops in performance. And as you can see, cutscenes are hard locked to 30. In this case it doesn't matter much because we're basically playing the game at that frame rate. So I don't think it's a big deal. After you get through the city, you'll be inside these apartments, which is more of a closed-off environment. Feels more like Silent Hill to me. And this is the first time you get the pistol. And as you can see, indoors is significantly faster. But there's also a lot of shadow casting lights, so now I can turn off my flashlight. And a lot of things cast shadows, which I think is pretty cool, even smaller objects. But hey, I think right now it runs surprisingly good. Let me show you now the smaller screen, because blown up on a monitor, it probably looks horrible for you guys. Let's see how it looks on a 7-inch screen with these settings. Welcome back, we're now in handheld, and well, what to say, I'm showing you daytime at the moment because, well, it's much easier to really show you without my reflection, but before doing that, let's unplug the charger. So we got 40 something FPS outside with the settings I showed you at the beginning. TSR low, which lowers the resolution quite significantly, plus low settings, SSAO enabled. My advice would be to do a frame limit of 30 FPS. If you have an OLED Steam Deck, it'll still be 90 Hz, but with a 30 FPS cap. On the Steam Deck LCD, you can do the same thing, and I highly recommend it. The issue is, it doesn't really fix the shader the traversal stutter. So what you get with this is basically 2.5 to 3 hours of battery. With an unlocked frame rate, battery life really isn't as good, obviously. Maybe 2 hours instead of 2.5 to 3. But again, the traversal stutter is still a thing. It's not like it goes away. On the X12, it's even worse. But on the X12, the good thing if you have an OLED Steam Deck is the HDR. HDR in this game, at least in my opinion, looks pretty damn good. So you're missing out on HDR, but at least you can stay above 30 way more consistently on the X11. So the other area I was talking about, again, forest. This is when it drops frames the most for me, at least in the few hours of gameplay that I have on it. But as I said probably at the beginning of this video, I don't know how often you'll be in a forest in a game like this. It seems more like a game where you'll be in small environments, such as indoors. And as you can see, cutscenes are locked to 30 FPS, but in this case, it doesn't change anything for us because, well, we're already playing at 30. Can you do 40s? No. It doesn't stay there. In the forest, it has a lot of problems, even hitting 30s consistently, as you can see here in this section. But again, first 5 to 10 minutes of the game at most. So I don't consider it a huge deal, because the biggest chunk of the game shouldn't be in an environment that looks like this. Again, like I showed you before this, the city, that's the town that I said. That's more of how the environments I expect to have in the game. Something more closed off and claustrophobic. And in this section you're going to see a lot of my face because it's very dark in this area, so apologies in advance. Not much that I can do about it. Hi there, how's it going? So again, pretty dark in here. I can increase the brightness a little, but yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear that this game is very, very dark. This is close, I think. Yeah, it is. But in here, performance is a lot better than the forest. It runs almost the same as the town outdoors in this part. There's still traversal stutter, which is pretty intrusive, as you can probably see, even with the 30 FPS lock. Seems to be an issue with the game itself. Happens on PC as well. Now I actually get a flashlight. That means jump scare. Let's get him. Okay, I think I got it. Let's kick him while it's down. There we go. And now you have a flashlight. And well, what to say? Indoors and in the town, everything except in the forest is fine. But you got the traversal stutter, which is annoying. But on the small screen, again, despite the drop resolution, you can see some shimmering, some chunkiness of the pixels. But again, at a 7-inch screen, really, it passes just fine. It looks good. It might be hard to see because you see my face and, well, maybe my reflection and all that. But in person, I think it looks pretty good. Blown up in a monitor at this resolution, of course, it won't look as good. You could see that at the beginning of the video. But, yeah. Right now, I think it's playable, but the traversal stutter really ruins it for me. I would say that's the biggest issue. If you're interested in the game, it's available on Steam. I highly recommend, again, DX11 for the reasons that I told you. Performance, amount of VRAM used, less noticeable stutter, but it's still there, of course. And I'm surprised. I was expecting way worse performance and visuals, all things considered. But we'll see what happens and if they release a patch to fix the traversal stutter issue. That is super annoying. Otherwise, the game looks pretty good. I would recommend it on Steam Deck if you want to. If you don't mind 30 FPS with traversal stutter, you should be good to go. It still holds up with the settings that I showed you. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys.